Is it possible that this summer, 2025, could be the bottom of the housing market for Manatee and Sarasota counties? Hey everyone, Catherine Newman here. Thanks so much for taking a few minutes to share in this discussion today about the possibility of this summer, 2025, the housing markets that we have right here in Manatee and Sarasota counties as the bottom of the market. And before we do, please help a gal out by subscribing to this channel and hitting that like button. So what is a market bottom? Well, in housing, it refers to the point where home prices have dropped as low as they're going to go before they stabilize and start to rise again. I want you to think of it as like hitting the floor, right? Prices can't fall any further, and I mean deep falls, and the market begins to recover. So imagine with me that the housing market is kind of like a roller coaster. You know, those fun things we loved when we were kids? There's peaks when the prices are high, and of course there's valley when you ride that coaster down to the lowest point. Well, the market bottom is that lowest point of that roller coaster in the valley before that sucker starts to climb again. And of course it's influenced by factors like supply and demand, interest rates, and of course the overall economy. Now, I know we don't like to discuss things like this because unfortunately the world's people, we're at odds more than I've ever seen in my lifetime. But the fact is, everybody, politics go hand in hand with supply and demand, and of course interest rates and all of that, the things that make up our economy. So I want you to spitball this with me, right? Because I want you to consider three big issues right now that make me consider more and more that the Gulf Coast of Florida might be in the bottom of the market right now. So what are the three components that I am watching and considering in order to determine if this is the bottom or not? Well, tariffs, wars, and of course, buyer sentiment. Let's talk about those blasted tariffs. Because of the tariffs, and of course, you know, as soon as the new administration took over, we started hearing about tariffs, and we saw a little fluctuation with things. And then, you know, there were deadlines given on when tariffs were going to be imposed, and then those deadlines were changed. I think just giving people more opportunity, especially the other countries, and I do agree that other countries have taken advantage of the United States when it comes to trading tariffs and the amounts and that sort of thing. But again, not trying to be political, just saying that because those things have kind of fluctuated over the first quarter of 2025, and now we are starting to see those tariffs take effect. We're starting to see more people want to come to the table. Here's some information here. If you look at these headlines about tariffs, people are changing their views on tariffs now. People that were against tariffs to begin with are starting to see that it probably is a good idea. We're starting to see European countries, of course, come to the table. And I think if we start to have this China deal with tariffs, I think we're going to start to see the tariff issue kind of play out. And I think it's going to take the rest of the summer for that to be dealt with, and that everybody come to some sort of agreement on what those tariffs are going to be. And in that process, that's one of the first reasons I think that this could be the bottom, because we haven't gotten there yet. So the economy doesn't quite know what to do with those tariffs. Although today the S&P was at its highest, a record high, after talking about that China deal that supposedly is on the table and being agreed to. So that's great news. So how is it going to affect the housing market? Well, it's going to affect it, and I'll explain that in a little bit. So tariffs, we're going to watch tariffs and see how long before they kind of go into effect and how the market responds to that. And of course, number two issue is, it's been something else, right? I mean, we've got, you know, Ukraine and Russia. We've got a lot of conflicts and wars going on the continent of Africa. And of course, we've got the Middle East. And of course, there's always the sleeper kind of wars going on between China, Taiwan, Korea. So there's a lot going on, as is usual with this world, which is really sad. But there's that sort of thing. And when you have wars and rumors of wars, and you're watching these things play out, you're also wondering, whoa, don't know where this is going. Sometimes war times can draw things way back as far as people being very careful. And sometimes it's a boost for the economy. So I think once we see these things get resolved, worked out or whatever, that's going to be a big indicator of how the housing market moves forward. So that is one issue that we're really watching. Of course, number 3 is buyer or consumer sentiment, builder sentiment. I want you to see these graphs here, these pictures here. So if you see from this just a few days ago, June 24th, 2025, U.S. consumer confidence was down in June. Of course, we're not at the end of June quite yet, but consumers remain concerned about the economy compared to May. They're undecided about plans to buy big ticket items overall. And of course, that totally makes sense. And we see here that new home sales plunged in May, led by a major slowdown in the South. So that doesn't help consumer sentiment. That was just Wednesday, the 25th of June. And let's talk about builder sentiment. Builder sentiment, of course, drives a lot of things. And this was June 17th, so just a week or so ago. U.S. home builder sentiment skids. I like that word. They skidding on down to 2.5-year low, according to the National Association of Home Builders. So that did decline. So all of this consumer confidence is really low right now, which is why I think we're going to stay in the bottom of our market here, because buyers are a little afraid to do anything right now until we work out, like I said, those things with tariffs and wars. The buyers have been on the sidelines, right? They're waiting to see some light at the end of the tunnel about these main issues because they're kind of in a holding pattern right now. So let's dive into the stats for Manatee and Sarasota counties. Now, if we look side by side stats for March, April, and May. So here's Sarasota County stats for March, April, and May. Remember, we don't have June's until the end of July. So all we have right now is March, April, and May. And I want you to pay attention to a few things that stick out here. Of course, you can see for each month, the first little part here is just talking about an amount of sales, right? So they were up year over year in March. They were up again year over year in April. And in May, they were down year over year. And then, of course, let's look at the pricing here from March to April to May. It's really stayed. Now, of course, obviously, they're down year over year than they were, of course, 2024. But look at the pricing, and that's what I want you to pay attention to. We were at about $470 in March, and then we're at $470 in April, and we're just down a little bit in May at $465. So that's why I think we're starting to come a little bit down in the bottom of our summer here. Even though we're at the beginning of our summer, I think this is the bottom of the market for us. However, it's not coming down much, so pay attention to that. Now, the days on the market is the next thing I want you to see, and that's kind of stayed steady too from March at 40 days. Now, of course, I'm just really looking at single family. Again, condos are a whole different ballgame. We have a glut of them on the market. But if you look at April, it was 43 days to contract, and then 51 days in May to contract. So we have increased. Again, that's why I think we're at the bottom here, people, because it's taken a little bit longer to go under contract. And let's look at the month's worth of inventory. This is a real good indicator. Again, single family, look, 6.9 months in March, 7 months in April, 6.6 months in May. So it's kind of stayed steady. This is still a buyer's market right now in Sarasota because it's over 6 months worth of inventory, but we are starting to see a little bit of decrease in that in May. We'll see where that goes in June, July, and August. And let's jump over here to Manatee County for the same months, March, April, and May. And we're going to see here, again, that year over year, the amount of closed sales is down in single family homes here. And then we're going to look at the pricing. So let's look at March of 2025. Actually, year over year,
The median price was at 506,317. It was up year over year from March of 2024. And then it went down in April to 464. Now that was a big decrease. That was really dropping out in April. And then we're going to see what happened in May. It kind of shot up a little bit more at 478. However, it's not far off from each other. So we're talking about, $8,000 to $10,000 difference here. And let's look at the days on the market. We're looking for March at 46 days, 50 days in April, and 52 days until, now this wasn't on the market from start to close, but from start to going under contract. So that has stayed steady for us, right? Just a matter of a few different days in between there. And let's look at the month's worth of inventory. Now for Manatee County, look at this, 5.2 months in March. It stayed the same in April, and it stayed the same in May. So I'm telling you, people, we're still kind of in almost getting to a balanced market right now at 5.2 months. A lot less inventory than Sarasota, but I'm telling you, I really feel like as we're seeing these things steady out, we're not seeing them jump up high into more inventory. That's why I feel like that we are kind of at the bottom of our market right now in Manatee and Sarasota counties.
So what's the bottom line for the key trends in Manatee and Sarasota County? Well, the median sale price trends are showing declines across the board in pricing, suggesting a continued downward pressure in our market. Now, inventory growth is slowing, which means the inventory levels remain elevated, of course, from last year, but month-over-month increases have begun to moderate, which is suggesting a potential shift towards our market stabilizing. And of course, market time, both time to go under contract and the time to close the sale, has increased year over year across most categories, signifying slower buyer decision-making and extended listing periods. So buyers are taking longer to make up their minds which house they want. But remember, this has remained a bit steady month over month when it comes to days on the market. So when buyers wait it out and they watch and they do nothing, the inventory levels remain steady, or they could keep growing. But as you just saw, in Manatee County, we've seen 3 straight months of the same amount of single-family inventory levels. They're not increasing, but rather they're holding steady. Now they're changing for condos. Condos, a whole different ball of wax. We'll talk about in another video. But we're seeing 3 months of about the same inventory levels also in Sarasota County, with a slight decrease in May. So the prices, especially in our areas here, are going to continue to stay lower than they've been year over year, but they have remained more flat. And of course, resale sellers and builders need to keep offering better prices, better incentives, because they want to attract buyers that can't wait it out, right? Those are the buyers that they need to buy something now. So we're going to still see resale sellers offering incentives and better prices and builders doing the same. And that's why it could be that this summer, right now, in Manatee and Sarasota County is the bottom of the market, because once these tariffs get worked out, and they will get worked out, and the effects of those tariffs begin to moderate and not be as much as the sky is falling kind of situation, and these war situations start to get worked out, and maybe there's more deals or there's more treaties that get made, and everybody calms the heck down.
Okay, everybody simmer down now, one at a time.
Then the feds are going to feel less pressure to keep the federal funds rate where it is. And you guys, if you've been watching the news, you already see that the vice president of the Federal Funds Committee, along with several other committee members, are in favor of a rate cut. And not to mention that our government is also putting pressure on the feds to lower the Fed rate. And when that happens, and of course it will happen, people are saying it's just a matter of when the buyer sentiment begins to go up, and consumers feel more at ease about where the economy is headed, what's going on with the tariffs, what's going on with the wars. And if interest rates start to drop, even if it's just a little, it will spur buyer activity, which is going to help stabilize the market. The buyers that have been on the sidelines will, like we saw the last time the rate went down just a little bit, those buyers jumped back into the housing market, gobbled up that inventory, and of course then basic supply and demand metrics, will they begin to shift. So let's talk about decreasing inventory. If the number of homes for sale starts to shrink, it is a sign, of course, that demand is picking up. Fewer homes on the market mean buyers are, of course, snatching them up, which often happens as the market begins to recover. Of course, there are broader economic factors like job growth and job stability that increases consumer confidence, because when people feel more secure about their jobs and the economy, they're more likely to invest in a home or in a car or, go on vacations again. For sellers, this really is a crucial concept, because if you're trying to sell at the bottom, and I'm just saying, think about this being the bottom over our summer here, you have to be realistic about your pricing, realistic about the condition of your home, and realistic about offering financial concessions to help your buyer purchase a home, and offering to pay for some or even all of the buyer's agent professional fee. Remember, builders are already offering these things to new construction buyers, so you have to compete with that. And if you're curious about what seller concessions make more sense, maybe for your selling situation, please make sure you watch this video here where I talk about the only thing working right now in our counties to get your home sold. Remember, buyers are looking for deals and they're getting them. And overpriced homes will they're going to sit on the market, they're going to collect dust, and they're going to make people think something's wrong, and they will choose another house because they have a lot of options now. So the signs of a market bottom for buyers is for you to recognize that the indicators that the housing market has hit its lowest point and is poised to stabilize or start climbing. That is your indication. So what is the stabilization of prices? One of the first signs of a market bottom is when home prices stop declining and they start to level off, which is what we are seeing in both of our counties over the past 3 months. This is kind of like the market taking a breather. Prices aren't dropping anymore, but they're not skyrocketing either. It's a sign that the market is finding its balance. Two, my observation is that while all of the political and economic and the international conflicts are getting worked out, maybe buyers should take advantage of the lower prices and make a move during this summer, because if that lower rate comes and those sideline buyers jump back in the market, they're going to eat up some of that inventory. And then what happens? The prices start to edge back up. And we can look at some historical data to back up that theory. So sometimes looking at past market cycles can give us clues. So if the market has been in a downturn for a while, which we have, it might be nearing its natural bottom. Real estate markets tend to move in cycles. And of course, after a period of decline, they usually start to recover. Let's look at this historical chart. So I wanted to bring you over to my computer so I can show you a really cool chart that gives you some historical data on where things have been since 1970. Now in 1970, I was only 2.5 years old, 3 years old, something like that. So I don't remember all of this, but it is cool to look back on history. So let's look at this chart here. So if you were a home buyer in 1970, here on the left, you'll see that the the median price, can you believe that? Oh my gosh, $24,000 for a house. And the interest rate was 7% in 1970. So if you thought, hey, I'm going to wait for the interest rate to come down, well, in 5 years, the interest rate, not only did it not come down in 1975, just 5 years later, the interest rate was almost 9.5%. And the prices of homes had increased in 5 years from 24,000 to 38,000. Still, oh my gosh, wouldn't that be awesome? Anyway, but back then that was a lot of money, people. Now, if you were in 1975 and you thought, I want to wait till those rates come back down to 7%. Well, you look at 6 years later, the interest rate in 1981 was 18.63%. And you guys, I remember my parents having to buy a home and having an interest rate at like 16 or 17%. I remember hearing as a little kid, early 80s, well, as a teenager by then, I remember thinking of, wow, that sounds terrible. What does that percent mean? And look, though, the prices in 1981 were $67,000 for the average home, the median price across the nation, $67,000. So anybody in 1970 who didn't take advantage of that 7%, look how long they were waiting on those rates to go down. And while they were waiting for the rates to go down, spit that out, the prices continued to go up, and they doubled between 75 and 1981. So if you're in 1981 and you're like, oh my God, there is like no flipping way that we can do an 18.63% interest rate, and whew, that's a lot. If you waited for those rates to come down, well, you waited until 1990. The rates did come down. Woohoo! They came down to 10.05%. But look at the price of a home in that amount of time. The appreciation of homes, again, almost doubled. 67,081 up to 124,000 for a median price home in 1990. So if you are one of those people that bought in 1970 at 7%, you were doing pretty good. You know, in that amount of time, in 20 years, you're making at least, of course, it's different in each market, but you're making money on your home. The prices continued to go up steadily, even though the rates only came down to 10.05%. And then, of course, if you zoom over here to 2022, oh my goodness, the rates were better in 2022, right? That's the peak of when rates were about, 4 or 5%. But look at the price of homes in that amount of time from 1990 to 2022. Wow. Talk about an increase. That's why we have affordability issues, people. So if you're waiting to time the market for the rates to go down before you buy, just remember the prices keep going up. And I don't believe we're going to see anything under 6%. God, that sounds terrible, doesn't it? I want you to think of the market kind of like a rubber ball, right? It's being dropped. And when it hits the ground and just before it bounces back up, there's a quick pause for a split second. And that, my friends, that pause is the market bottom. It's the moment when things stop falling and they start to turn around. While no one can predict the exact moment of a bottom, for buyers, these signs can give them confidence that they're making, of course, a smart move by buying when the prices are low and the market is poised to recover, which is what we're seeing right now. Could we be in that pause here on the Gulf Coast? Now let's go over what they're forecasting for the future of prices.
Well, here's what the experts are saying about the housing market predictions for pricing for the next 4 years, 2025 to 2029. And of course, this just came out on June 22nd. And remember, these are national predictions. It's different wherever you live. It's different in mine. I've already proven to you that we've seen prices decrease over the last year over year from 2024 to 2025 here on the Gulf Coast. However, we're starting to see them flatline and moderate. And of course, for the nation as a whole, they're saying it's going to be a matter of tapping the brakes, right? Moderation is the name of the game for 2025 and 2026. They're thinking nationally they'll see prices increase for the end of this year by 3.4%. And then for 2026, it's kind of similar, 3.3% growth. So we are seeing it improve, but not by major amounts. And then let's look right here. It says, let's be clear, this is not a prediction of a crash. We're not having a crash, but we are talking about moderation, which is pretty normal for the market and can be healthy for the long-term stability of the market. So here are the predictions nationally. Remember, this is nationally. The average annual appreciation rates will hover, they say, between 3% to 5% each year up to year 2029. And this is according to Fannie Mae's survey of over 100 housing experts that they did back in the fourth quarter of 2024. And here's what the survey said for Fannie Mae. Now, what's interesting over here on the left, you see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You see these years here in the pre-bubble, the bubble, and then you'll see the recession, of course, the recovery, and then COVID years. You'll see all of that data. There's only been one time where the prices fell, as you see right here. And of course, that was the Great Recession, about 2006 to 2012. But we're going to look over here on the right. Now, what they did was they gave the survey and asked what they thought their price expectations would be for housing. Again, this is nationally. And out of all of those that they surveyed, they had an optimistic view of things. And then there were those who had a pessimistic view of what the increase would be. And then they took the average of that. So if we look right here, the optimists, don't you love those optimists? They feel like the annual average growth rate is going to be about 5.5%. That might happen in some markets, not going to happen here in Florida. And then, of course, the pessimists, they say that it's going to be a 1.6%. Now, I do believe that we're going to see it more about the average, which is what we see here. This says 3.7. This was the average of all of the survey. I still think we're going to be in that 3.4, 3.5 range. This is pretty close. But if you look at this chart, people, no one is saying that there is going to be a downturn in price growth expectations. Everybody is expecting to see increase. And just because I want to show you some more data, if you look at the home price expectation survey right here, they're saying steady gains expected through, listen, gains expected through 2029 nationally. And let's say right here they have 2025. If most markets nationally do see an increase of 3.4% price growth appreciation during this year, and then you cumulatively add that up, at the end of 2029, that is a positive 19.8% increase in price growth, which is a pretty good chunk of appreciation over the next 5 years. Now, again, it's going to be different in each market depending on where you live. So if you've been watching a bunch of videos about the market crashing, now, of course, every market is different, but for the most part, if you're asking about that, it says right here, the key indicators of a housing market crash are, number one, an up to 21% average decline in U.S. home prices, which is not what we're seeing now, or an increased foreclosure and property mortgages, of course, that are underwater, that sort of thing. We're not seeing that. So will it crash? Well, based on the current trends in housing market predictions over the next 5 years, the answer is no, because the two factors aren't expected to happen, and a housing market crash is not on the horizon. So if you've been hearing doom and gloom, it might be, again, that some portions of different local markets might be seeing bottom prices, which is why I didn't call this, a market crash, because we're not having one. But if you've been watching that, here's the data for what the indicators are for a crash. And right now, again, we live in a weird, weird world. Was that a movie? Weird, weird world. And we live in a weird world. So the deal is that anything can happen. Anything can happen. There's wars and there's all these tariff things but I think that we're on an upward trend. I think things are starting to stabilize. We're seeing the signs of it. So no market crash, people.
There you see the housing market is expected to transition into a period of slower growth in the coming years. The housing supply shortage will remain, of course, a key challenge and continuing to affect, unfortunately, affordability and competition in the market. Mortgage rates are likely to stay above 6%, which means realistic budgeting will remain essential for anyone looking to purchase a home. Now, for sellers, it suggests that the market remains favorable, but of course, it's going to require realistic pricing and expectations. And it's important to remember that national trends only tell a part of the story because every local market is going to behave differently, right? What's happening where you are is not happening where I am. And of course, another region is experiencing something else. So even different price points within the same market can experience completely different dynamics, just like Lakewood Ranch to Parrish or Parrish to Palmetto. And if you need to, or maybe you want to sell your home in either of these counties, and you want to know the realistic market value of your home, please don't hesitate to give me a call, and we can discuss your home's current value in today's market. And if you are in a position to buy and you'd really like to talk about what's going on in this market now and the possibilities of buying during our off season. So summer is really our off season. It's our down season. We're not like the rest of the country. So we already have prices that are a little bit better and lower. And of course, we still have more inventory and you have more choices. Then likewise, guys, if that's you, you really need to give me a call because I do believe that this is kind of the bottom of our market. And I think once those things are worked out with those issues of tariffs and wars and, and of course, buyer sentiment, and of course the interest rates, when we see that change, if it changes, but I think we're going to see it change, I think that we're going to start to see buyers jump in, take up the inventory, and prices are going to edge up a little bit. So now might be the best time for you to grab something while there's still great incentives and a lot of options. And please, if you want to hear more about these markets and what the lifestyle is and just things about places to live here near the Gulf Coast beach areas, I'd love to hear from you. Give me a shout out and please make sure that you like this video and subscribe to this YouTube channel so you're alerted every time a new video is available. I'm Catherine Newman. Thanks so much for tuning in. See you next time.